Those guys up in the big cushy chairs asking the questions and looking very dignified and very concerned about everything, they have no control whatsoever over any of the policies of the economy or the money.
Which brings us to the policies. Why are they printing all this money? Are they in trouble? Is the whole thing getting ready to blow up? What is going on right now?
Okay, well, thanks for keeping me nudged along.
I want to keep you right in there because this is an unbelievable, unparalleled. We have the longest expansion in history. They've all of a sudden completely switched around, and they went from, we're going to keep raising interest rates to, no, we're not, we're going to lower them, and now they're stopped. And then they've come up with QE, and they're in the, the repo market. What in the heck is going on? What are they afraid of?
Okay, well, see, you're a newsman and that kind of a guy, and I'm sort of a historian sometimes, and so we come at this from different perspectives, and now they come together, and you want to say, okay, forget all the history and all this background, what are we up to? And I'm saying that, well, I'm going to tell you what we're up to, but unless you know the background, you won't believe it.
Okay.
So right. That's what this is all about. We have to realize that these people are not working in our best interest. They have their own hidden agendas, which is everything is for the banks. It's that we're living in a system of the banks and by the banks and for the banks. Now that is a reality. So now, what's going on today? Well, I can tell you that it's not in the interest of the people of the world. It's in the interest of the banks. They raise interest rates only because it will improve the position of the banks. They lower interest rates only because it will improve the position of the banks. Whatever they do, it's for the banks and only for the banks. And just because they talk about, well, we're going to preserve jobs or stabilize the economy, or we're going to fight inflation and all these things which imply it's for you folks, you have to scratch all that from your ears, because you have to look at these people and say, okay, everything they do is for the best interest of the banks. So now we finally come to your question, what's going on? They're flooding the world. This isn't just in America, but it's all over the world now. All these central banks, by agreement, surely between them, are expanding the money supply and expanding the money supply. And the question why is hard to answer, because I don't sit in those chambers when they make these decisions. But knowing a little bit about how the system works, I suspect this is why. They see that the wheels are coming off. It's kind of a game of, well, let me put it this way. The system of inflation under which we live cannot go on forever. If you take a number and you double it every day, it doesn't take very long before the number is so large that it's impossible. And then the day after that, it's twice as impossible. If you start doubling a number every hour, probably by the end of the day, you would have a number which has so many zeros that if each zero were a half an inch wide, it would go around the universe, okay? Something like that. It's impossible. So all systems of exponential growth always collapse. They come to an end at some point. It's hard to tell exactly at what point, but you do know that there is a breaking point where it just moves beyond reality. The banks know this better than most people because they deal with these exponential expansions of numbers. So I'm assuming that they feel that they're at the end. You can smell it, you can see it, you can touch it almost. And so what do? Well, you don't suddenly start to be conscientious and say, well, gee, we made a mistake. Let's start moving backwards and see if we can't fix it. They can't, because their machine only has one direction to go. So their thinking, I believe, is we're at the end, guys. Let's just make it for what it's worth. Grab all we can so that when the system collapses, we'll be okay. Now, that's kind of a crude way of putting it, but I think that they're going for broke because they know it is broke, and there's not much they can do about it. Now, what they intend to do, I think I know, and that is that they're waiting for the big collapse to come. They'll personally be okay because they will have amassed hard assets. They're trying to hold all the gold, all the silver, all the real estate, all the stuff that has value, the tools and the machines and stuff like that, the food supplies. But everything else, which is based on numbers and paper and debt and all that will collapse. And so they'll be able to pick up everything with like pennies on the dollar. Those who have assets will be able to acquire the rest of the assets that are being foreclosed on because the system collapsed. But then I think what they're planning to do is jump in one big step to the international money supply. They'll say, okay, the world was bad to us. They won't admit that they had anything to do with it. They'll say, look, what happened is because all wars, or they'll blame somebody. It won't be them. They'll probably blame you and me for bringing the truth out and writing these bad books about the Federal Reserve and causing the public to lose confidence in the system, and that's what broke the system, stuff like that. But what they'll say, okay, now we are going to fix it. And the average person will think, oh, well, good, I'm glad they're going to fix it. Not dreaming or knowing that it was a cartel that broke it. So they're going to turn right back to the members of the cartel and say, well, fix it. And so what they're going to do is offer a fix, which will be the same thing, only it'll be international in scope. There'll be one new money supply that they'll offer, and it'll be just as bad as all of the old ones, but we won't know any different because the experts, the authorities are telling us, oh, this is going to fix it. So all the old system will be swept away, leaving in its debris all of the 99% of the people struggling, drowning, clamoring for survival, begging for anything that would help them put food on the table or have a job or have clothes to wear and heat in the house and when it's cold. They'll beg for anything. They won't ask these academic questions or what would a better system be. All they will want to know is who's going to help us. And so the politicians and the bankers will step forward and they'll say, we'll help you. And everybody say, oh, good, good. Well, what do you want us to do? And they'll tell us what to do, which is go live in the barracks and eat the food we're given and have the health care that's provided. And we'll become slaves. They own the system. And that's the end game. And of course, when the people rebel, as many of them will, martial law will come out. And people like you and I will be put in FEMA camps and will be called terrorists and so forth. And the system will be locked down. And their dream, the end game, is to have a system of total control. And with the people being thankful that they have these great masters ruling their lives because, look, they saved us from the economic collapse.
Nirvana, explained in about 5 minutes. Thank you for the history lesson. I don't mean to diminish you in any way.
I understand.
You're a super smart
right
guy.
On track. You're right on track, Greg.
You're a super smart guy. But, you know, that's like Helen Keller with the water, man. Oh, got it. So, and what do you make of Donald Trump? They want him out. Oh my gosh, they want him out. They want him out. They want him out by any means necessary. They want him out. They want him out. Why? Why do they want Trump out?
Well, I wish you hadn't asked me that question, because how shall I answer this? I'm going into unproven territory right now. Everything I've said up until now, I have some very hard evidence to back up what I'm saying. Now, this question about Mr. Trump causes me to reflect back on what I've learned in my years of researching how this cartel and their friends and other cartels as well, how they work. And I've learned that their most powerful enemy, I'll get this right, their most powerful weapon is to offer their own opposition. They call it controlled opposition. That's how they sold the Federal Reserve, by the way, to the American people. The banks put together the Federal Reserve System, and then they had to sell it, make the people want it. And so some of the bankers themselves went on public on the road and began to speak against the Federal Reserve that they had created. They said, this system is bad. It's going to be bad for America, be bad for business. And the average person read that in the newspaper and said, oh, listen, Maud, look, the bankers don't like the Federal Reserve much. It must be pretty good. That's how it worked. It always works that way.
So you think Trump, a lot of people will disagree with you on that, but you think
I know that, of course.
He might be controlled opposition.
I'm not even saying that's what it is. I'm just saying that I'm aware of this pattern. It's the strongest weapon they have. Now, if they wanted to get rid of Mr. Trump, I think they could have. In fact, I believe they could have prevented him from being elected because some years ago I produced a documentary film called Invisible Ballots. And this was at least 15 years ago. I was convinced then that they actually could, at that time, control the count on any election if they wanted to because of the computerized systems which they control, no paper record or anything like that. It's all electronic and it's easily controlled. And when Mr. Trump was elected, I thought, why did they let him be elected? And then I just tucked that question away. And then I remembered that Mr. Trump was on the campaign trail early, and he said, vote for me because I'm a businessman. I make deals. I'm a deal maker. I can work with anybody, he said. I don't care who it is. I work with them. We get things done. And most people thought, oh, that's good. Yeah, we want somebody that gets things done without asking what things. But I was thinking about what things are going to get done. And I tucked that away. And then a few months later, after it became a little more popular, the press condemned him, but they didn't condemn him. They were always saying that the left condemned him. Well, there are a lot of people that think that if the left condemns something, it's got to be good, without examining what it is itself. I mean, the left condemns the right. The communists condemned the Nazis. Does that make the Nazis good? No, but it's a game that they play very well. They know how people don't ask those deep questions. And so I had that tucked away in my mind. And then I read in the paper that Mr. Trump spent a day with Henry Kissinger in his place in New York. I thought, what? What is Trump spending with Kissinger, Kissinger, who, as everybody should know, is the bag man for the Rockefellers? And they're the most powerful economic and political force in the United States, maybe second to, in the world, probably number 2. What? And then all of a sudden, of course, he told us. I know now what he was doing there. He was making a deal. He said he's a deal maker. A deal. Well, what could the deal have been? I don't know. These are just questions, Greg, just questions. And so Trump gets elected. I think, that's amazing. And everybody's cheering him because the left hates him. Now, I'm here to tell you that if Trump didn't have all these outrageous, ugly people screaming and yelling and threatening and doing stupid, outrageous, vulgar things against him, I think he would look like a buffoon. But
really?
He's got the right enemies. He's got the right enemies.
I mean, so he did, just on his behalf, he got us out of the TPP. He got us out of the Paris Climate Accord.
Put us right back, by the way, have you noticed, in a different arrangement. We're not out of the international agreement. We appear to be. Yeah, he got us out of that one, but we're still cooperating over here. He's going to stop the illegal immigration, and that is worse now than ever before. Everything you look at that he appears to have, he said all the right things, and sometimes he did the right things, but everything he did that was correct has been undone now, or in the process of being undone.
Well, we still have the Iran nuclear deal that wasn't signed. He got out of that, where pallets and pallets of cash.
Okay. Now
they got the Paris Climate Accord. I'm not arguing with you, but I do want to bring up some positive points. That was.
I agree with that, and I want to make this very clear because I know that a lot of people are going to be outraged by what I'm saying, and I don't like to say this, but I want to emphasize that this is not my theory. These are the questions I'm asking because I see a pattern developing. Because I think that if Hillary had been elected, there would have been no violence in the street. I can't see.
No, you'd be in a concentration camp, though.
Yeah. Well,
so would I.
Maybe. And so possibly. Anyway, but I think that, if they can create enough violence with this simulation of race war, it's a simulation. I mean, what we see on television, as you know, Greg, is not the reality. It's like a little tiny window, and it's all staged. You move the camera over here, and it's a whole different story. But as long as the camera is focused on that crowd of 5,000 or 10,000 people, it looks like the world. They never go over and show you the buses lined up on the back streets where Soros's people brought in all those demonstrators who are being paid. So it's theater. And by the way, back to Mr. Trump again. I remember, I even recorded this. I have it in my computer. In the campaign trail, somebody asked him, Mr. Trump, what are you going to do about Mr. Soros if you're elected? And he said, oh, poor Mr. Soros, leave him alone. He's got enough problems.
Oh, forget Soros.
The media loves Obama.
He's got enough problems. She goes, what about Soros? Let's talk about somebody else.
What? And then I find out that he's a social friend of Soros. And I've heard, I haven't proved this, but I heard that Soros and his consortium was the biggest investor in bailing out Trump Towers. Otherwise, Trump would have been bankrupt. But I heard, this is something for you to check out. I want to do it myself. I just haven't gotten around to it. These things happen. Anyway, I wish you hadn't asked me the question because my honest answer is what I just told you.
You got a lot of questions.
I have a lot of questions. And if this is true, it's it's really bad because
what happens if it's not true? What would make you think, oh, well, I didn't know that was.
If it's not true, I just want to know how come they haven't gotten rid of him. Because if they can get rid of Kennedy, they can.
Well, they've been working awful hard at it.
Well, there are ways other than doing it in the media.
I understand that. Well, he's also got, some of the biggest security forces surrounding him in the world, including Blackwater. Remember them?
Well, I know.
Remember Academy? He's hired his own. This is some serious stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I have a lot of questions too.
Yeah,
I know he's better than Hillary, who said there were limits to the First Amendment, and there are limits to the Second. Excuse me, there are limits to the Second Amendment, and there are limits to the First, said Hillary to Fox News anchor Chris Wallace, who sat there like a buffoon and went, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, I know.
He just sat there. Anyway,
and what you will see is that the same Zionist powers that fund your movement fund the left. Now, I know most of you are going, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you fund two contradicting movements? It's very simple. Divide, weaken, rule. It's the Hegelian dialectic. You divide the masses amongst each other and get them arguing over stupid shit that doesn't change the bigger picture, like transgender bathrooms, thus limiting their potential to actually make a difference. Then you, the Zionist megacorporation or bank, sits back and waits for a movement, whatever movement, to gain the most momentum. And as that movement rises to power, so do you, because you fund both sides. So it doesn't matter who wins, regardless of who they are or what their rhetoric is, they're indebted to you, because you funded them to get to where they're at. So what you see with every president, and Trump's no different, they say one thing during the campaign to get elected, and you put your all into helping that movement because you probably thought it was a grassroots movement, but in reality, Cambridge Analytica was data mining the talking points that you wanted to hear, and Trump was simply repeating them.
The very same people who are now saying, go Trump, yay, 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 are the ones who 8 years ago would have been saying that's a load of garbage and nonsense. And I see this actually from some of the feedback that I get where, no, you see, you don't get it. Trump understands all this and he knows that it's all a game and a charade, but you see, he's playing into it so that he can undermine the propaganda and blah, blah, blah. It's like, what kind of nonsense backflips are you doing to say that this person who has the soapbox of all soapboxes in the world, anything he says is going to be publicized all around the world, who could actually come out and say the truth? No, he's playing into the lies in order to undermine the lies in 14-dimensional chess, blah, blah, blah. That kind of nonsense.
Anyway. That's our problem, is that we have to ask questions, and we have to ask the ugly questions, because if we don't ask them...
Fair enough.
We have to do
Fair
that.
enough.
And this is the kind of thing, actually, that goes on at the Red Pill. There are a lot of unpleasant issues that come up, and we don't even want to think about them, because, my golly, if I can't trust my political leaders... If I can't trust my doctor, if I can't trust my lawyer, if I can't trust my minister, or whatever our issue is, where we have authorities that we have faith in, but then we're through. That we just think, we give up, we're gone.
I know.
And so nobody wants to even ask these questions. And I think that's a mistake, because in the end, we're born into this world alone. We go out alone. And in the middle, we have a lot of friends, but it's still, we're individually responsible for our beliefs and our actions, and we have to have facts, real hard facts. Got to get out of the vat, got to take the red pill and look at reality to see it the way it really is.
Okay, well, you don't have to be alone if you have Jesus. That would get me fired. Saying this right now, that would get me fired on network television. They'd haul me into the office and ream me for that. Of course, Jesus is not a figment of your imagination. He's well documented. Lee Strobel, the case for Christ. But I digress. How does the normal, I ask this all the time, and you're the guy to answer this question, because people always I'm a little person. My daddy was a machinist. I don't have any pedigree, man. I'm a mutt. And so little people like me want to know, what the heck do I do? What do I do? What do I do with this bankers, and they're printing all this money and they want to take control? What does the little guy do in your estimation? This is in your wheelhouse.
Well, I think I have an answer, and it's one of those unpleasant answers, by the way. The way the question is normally asked to me is what can the average person do?
Okay.
And my answer is nothing. The average person is not going to do anything. The average person will watch his television. He'll never ask questions, especially the hard questions. The average person will believe everything that his authority tells him. The average person will back away from controversy, and because he doesn't have the stomach for that, he wants to be loved and liked by everybody, so he'll never speak up, even when his most basic rights are being violated. Average person can't do anything. So the answer is, if you want to do something, is stop being average. You got to climb up out of that level and you have to become unaverage. You have to start asking questions, and you have to stand up and be able to take it on the chin now and then. You've got to get into the fray, get into the battle, speak up, join with others of like mind, get organized, start becoming active in the political arena, start forming your own channels of communication, start teaching your own kids instead of turning them over to the state. You've got to stop being average, and that's the answer. That's what we talk about at Red Pill. At the ending session, we'll be talking a lot about something called Red Pill University, as where we begin to take back sovereignty over our own lives and our own environment.
In the physical world, should people be owning silver, food, water? I mean, for the rough spots that may happen coming up. If Donald Trump is the guy that they want to destroy, and we get into a full-blown battle between Trump and his backers, which a lot of people say are the military and the white hats, and the globalist, evil, Luciferian, well, you know, I don't know, National Socialist, communist, Marxist, globalist, Satanist, I don't know, pick one term. They're all in there.
One, yeah.
So if we get into a real knockdown, drag out, they're going to crash the economy and they're going to make Trump look bad. Do normal people need food and water and silver and some cash and, you know, stuff like that? A car title?
Yeah, Greg, I think that the question produces its own answer, is that you've got to have assets that are not paper money or based on paper money. If push comes to shove, you've got to be able to eat. You've got to have something that serves as money. That means barter. So even whether it's moments of crisis or moments of calm, I have always felt, since I learned anything about money, which was when I started to write my book, but ever since that day I realized what the history of money was and how civilization has gone through cycles where economies collapse. They collapse. It's not something you wonder if, it's a question of when. And once you realize that, then you start thinking, well, what happened to the people that lived in those economies when they collapsed? And it's always the same. Those that were totally dependent on paper currencies or whatever the national currency was, they perished in one way or another. Some of them physically perished. The rest were just reduced to slavery. They had to be beggars or whatever. But those that had physical assets, and what usually that's gold or silver, but it could have been other things. It could have been. I say this jokingly. Today I said if I could make a recommendation, if you got some money, go buy a warehouse full of cheap white wine, okay, and then guard it, because when things really get bad and people can't afford anything else, they'll be buying wine to dumb down their senses. So you'll do very well with wine or rubber tires or cement, bags of cement, things like that everybody needs, even in times of great crisis. You'd be better off than if you just had a big stack of dollar bills that don't buy anything anymore. So the answer is you need physical assets if you have any resources at all. Unfortunately, most people don't have any resources beyond day-to-day living. They haven't saved anything. They've been taught that saving is stupid. You know, why save? Because you can always get more money, right? And the question, why would you save? And it's a good question, because if you saved it in terms of a bank account and 5 years down the line you thought you had $100,000 that was going to really be worth a lot of money, but 5 or 10 years down the line you can't buy a postage stamp with $100,000, as it happened in the Weimar Republic. In Germany, years ago, their money was so devalued that you took a wheelbarrow of money, of paper money, to the grocery store to buy a loaf of bread. So anyway, back to the question. You need hard assets. And for most people, that's gold or silver. You don't have to worry about, well, you do have to protect it. That's one of the weaknesses. If you've got a little stash of gold coins or silver coins, you have to worry about somebody stealing it from you. And that's true of anything of material value in any system. If you've got a car, you've got to worry about somebody stealing it from you, especially if the police department is gone and you can't rely on them, or maybe maybe the police department, what you have to worry about stealing your car. Maybe those, things like that happen in societies. So I don't have the answer to that, except in the broad term is that get out of money. Have what you need to live on, but if you have any surplus at all, my advice would be to move it into hard assets that you can control and that which will be of value to a lot of other people. And that's as far as I can go.